Alright then, so I've got the grounds of the estate mowed here, and thank you for the tip of the lawnmower blades being on upside down, but actually what's wrong is the blades are on fine, the mower's upside down. Ha ha ha. Hey, take my wife, please. It was a tough room tonight. So anyway, I will fix those blades, because the old blades had grass side down, or this side towards the grass, whatever it said, and the new ones didn't have that. So I've never actually had to change lawnmower blades before, believe it or not. All the stuff I've done hadn't done lawnmower blades, but now I know, so thank you, and we'll move on. So anyway, it's time to get into something else. So what are we going to do now? You. Alright then, so here's the deal. So the last installment on this Plymouth, I went ahead and swapped out the electronic carburetor for the standard 2280, and it ran better, but it kind of developed another set of issues. So I guess I don't know what that's about, it other than the lean burn is aware that its life is being cut short and its retirement date is being forced upon it, and it's not taking it well. But what happened was it ran better overall, but it started stalling, and it still had a little bit of that kind of this type thing. And what I think's going on with that, for the most part, I think it's probably the timing is too low on it, but the stalling is not good, and we don't need that. And the whole deal with this lean burn thing, getting rid of it, it's not so much that I dislike lean burn, it's just that box up there, you know, try to think along with me here. You know, you're on a trip someplace and that box decides that it's going to go belly up or fail intermittently or whatever, and so you're driving along and the engine just shuts down and you coast off to the side of the road, and that's where you sit for ever how long until it decides that it's either going to work again or it is never going to work again. So there's no user-friendly parts in that thing. You can't fix it on the side of the road. Now the options are, if you want to replace that, you can do a couple different things with the ignition system on these. What you can do is you can either replace it, what's on there, the lean burn stuff, with the factory type ignition, which is kind of complicated because it just has a basic distributor and a coil, but after that it has an ECU box, which is large, and you have to find a place to put it and run the associated wiring, and then you have a ballast resistor there that has to be placed, and then associated wiring. And it's just a really kind of an obsolete system for what it does. So I'm not much into that, because those ballast resistors can fail and that makes it quit running, and then the box can fail and that makes it quit running. So, you know, we're shooting for reliability here. So the other option is, the one that I'm going to pursue, is I'm going to build an HEI kit for it. And actually I have one that I built already, which for some reason didn't work. So not for this, I didn't try it on this car, this has been years ago, but I did one on the truck back then that I had about 5 years ago, that Dodge pickup, and I did those videos, and I'm going to try to do this more concisely this time and provide more detail as far as like the wiring and things. So that said, let's go ahead and get cracking on this. We're going to just kind of redo this thing, so let's go find what we need to do this with. Okay, first I need a distributor. That's it. First one picked up. Good. I have a couple more in there, but they're to something else. That's the slant 6, and that other one is to this 383 back here in this Plymouth. So anyway, got the distributor. Good. Take that out here to the table. Now I need to find my kit that I built way back. Where did I put that? Where would it be? Now, if I was an HEI kit, where would I be? Would you be in there? Nope. In there? Nope. In there? You. Okay, let me go looking for this. Be back. Found it. All right. Okay then, so I can get my chair and we'll talk about this kit a little bit. Sorry for the shaky cam. Okay, so what I'm starting out with as far as this distributor goes is I pulled this out of pulled it out of a junkyard engine. This was out of like a 79 318, I think it is. That's your tag there. It says 411-1501, which is just a standard distributor, nothing high performance about it or anything. And there's your date code, which is 42nd week of 8, which would be 78. I know it's not 68 because they didn't have electronic ignition in 68, and it was in a 79 truck, so pretty well certain that's what that is. So it looks all good to go in here. There's not much in this except there's a set of weights and stuff down here below this breaker plate, or used to be called a breaker plate. But I went through it and cleaned it up inside and then kind of put it back together. And this should be fine. There's really nothing you do to these except you can set the air gap between the reluctor and the pickup coil there, the Hall effect. And past that, you just put rotors on it when it needs it, and caps and stuff. But what this one needs is it has a bad vacuum can on it, so we're gonna have to get that vacuum can replaced. And then the kit over here, this is what everybody likes to see here. This is a neat little setup. Well, I like the looks of that. Look at that coil right there. Guess it's all right, but anyway, what this is and what it came off of is this originally was off of like a mid-90s GM Blazer, the small one, like with a 4.3 liter, and they might have had these on a 4.3 in a pickup truck or an Astro van or something like that. But what it is a bracket that mounts, maybe I think is on the intake of those engines, but it's neat because the bracket holds both of this coil here and also I hear those blackbirds up there. This is the ignition module, and this is what controls the distributor and the coil and all that. So this is just as simple as a standard GM 4-pin ignition module. And normally what looks interesting about this is that these are normally inside the distributor on the older models, and on this one they're out here on this little heat sink. And it's important that you put them on some kind of piece of metal that's not like right on the engine, because these things generate, as they operate, they generate some heat, so they need to be able to dissipate that. So it's a real nice, compact little setup here. And that coil looks weird to me, that it's kind of got little marks on it, but hopefully that thing's okay. If not, I guess I'll have to go get another one. But this coil is actually made to this bracket, I see, and there's not going to be any easy way to get that thing apart, but if it's bad. But the thing about this is about this coil is, you see how this is a square type of coil. You've seen these on the General Motors, and you've seen some on Ford products. And there they are, right up there. Those are cowbirds. Tell you what, they'll eat a feeder dry if you let them. Anyway, the thing about these coils are, this is what's called an E-core coil, and it's not an oil-filled coil. And this is what they recommend you use with these types of ignition systems. Like, they use a GM module, so we're going to use it. And if it's bad, we'll have to go get another one. But this is kind of a hack job I did. This is not some of my best work at all. So I don't like the tape, and I don't like the come and get us. Hauling ass somewhere. So anyway, I don't like the twisted together wires and the cheapo connector and stuff and all that. And I don't know that this module, it looks original. There's GM imprinted on them. They don't normally have that anymore. So this thing, 6J of 09, I wouldn't be surprised if that's either a 79, 89, or 99 module. I think I got this module out of a different, I think what it is I remember something about this, is that these come with a module, but I don't think they come with the right one. I think it comes with like a different size or different style module. I don't know. But you have to use the old style, like a 76, 77, 78, 79, whatever. You can't use one with more than 4 prongs on it. So anyway, we're going to get rid of that and replace it. I've got some stuff to fix all this and get rid of the red wire. And basically what happens to this thing is, it's all self-contained, mounted up to wherever you want to put it, somewhere off the engine preferably, and you get 12 volts to it by this. Beautiful, isn't it? And then you make yourself a patch cable that goes from this unit here over to the distributor. If you look right over here, here's the other end where that goes, right there. So anyway, some work to be done, and we're going to go ahead and get into that. And see what I got. I got a couple new parts right here. So yeah, they know I'm the one that brings the food out. So ordered off of the internet. I ordered a new vacuum can for this. Just bolts onto the side of it. It's easy to figure out. And then one-handed. Here's your model. Same as that thing. So these yeah, except for that, you know, you can't hardly get one of these anymore. It's not made in China. This is a TRW or something, isn't it? Standard ignition T series. Jeez. Well, whatever. But Anyway, that goes on there, so we're going to replace the module, and I'm going to include a wiring diagram as far as how to do these wires between this, because I'll be honest with you, I don't remember without looking at a diagram, so I'm not going to worry about that at the moment. Let's get the thing rebuilt and rewired, and then we'll talk about that. So let's look for the wires. See, I know where everything's at. Well, that mower ought to do good when I put the blades on the right way. I get some wire, some black wire this time. I don't like this red stuff. And some connectors, which I'm going to peel off the plastic bits of that. Sorry guys, I'm going to get rebuilding this thing, and I'm going to clean that distributor up, and that, and we're going to go from there. So I'll come back to you whenever I got something to show you interesting. Well, I got all tore up about that module saying made in China on it. And this is the original GM module. It says, if you can see there, GM right there on it out front. See that? See that where it says it right there, GM. See that? Up there. Well, you turn it over. What's that say? Singapore. Yep. One crucial thing to remember when you're putting one of these things together, you're going to deal with one of these modules, is when you put on the surface that it's going to be mounted to permanently, then make sure that you put on a coat of this heat sink compound. And this one came with some, where is it? Yeah, right here. Came with a nice little envelope of it there, so that's fine, that's all good, but I had some extra on hand if I need it. You can go to some place that deals in electronics and get this stuff. I got this from Radio Shack once upon a time when they were actually open here, but it's called heat sink compound. And do not make the mistake that I made at one point in time and use this stuff, which is called dielectric grease. That's not the same thing. Dielectric grease is for terminals and things like that. So make sure you do that and don't skimp on this step, because you know it's mounted metal to metal. It may never have a problem, but try to do it the right way. Alright, so even though I'm using these cheapo parts store aluminum terminals, I want to get rid of these goofy looking blue plastic things on here. So here's how I'm going to do it. By the way, did anybody catch that on R Peak's, one of his latest videos? And there's a pack of Marlboro lights in the dash of the car. I seen that. Somebody smokes. Yeah, I've never seen anybody smoke on their videos before, but one or both of them are definitely smoking. Hard to tell which. His wife runs and rides bicycles and stuff. But they're on her side of the car, aren't they? I don't know. Inquiring minds would like to know. Hey man, when I said I was going to do this much better this time around, I was serious about it. Soldered all my connections. That end. And this end also. Really like, well, I guess this is as good a connection as any. Sometimes I like to use those little butt splices, but I think sometimes they can cause more problems than they solve. So we're just going to do this, and I've also got some heat shrink in place to heat shrink the terminals and stuff. Yeah. So I'm using electrical tape to wrap this wiring harness. I'm making in a close approximation of the way that they did it back in the day on Chrysler products. If you ever notice, you look under the hood and a lot of the wiring is wrapped with tape, and that's what they did. I don't know what kind of tape. I'm just using good old 3M electrical tape. But can you imagine that sometime back in the day that there was probably a person who spent every day of every week, work week, doing nothing but building wiring harnesses. So that means they had to get the plans out for them, get all the proper color wires, cut them to length, put the terminals on them, which they probably had a machine to put the terminals on them, but do all that stuff and solder them where they need to be soldered, which those cars have what's called, if you're looking under the dash harness, they've got where all these wires will come together, they've got this big connection there, and they called it a welded splice, but basically I guess what it is, they probably had an arc, like a low power arc welder type of a thing that just kind of together. But those things are notorious for giving trouble on these older Mopars if you push a lot of current through them, so you try not to push much current through them. But anyway, back to the story, that's probably what somebody did all day every day, was build wiring harnesses. So I'm sure after you built 10,000 Plymouth Duster wiring harnesses, you probably got a little bored with it, I would say. Are you getting bored? Alright, so now then, you know what, I've forgotten which one of these wires is which. One of them's positive, one's negative on this end, so before I put this thing together, I'm going to have to ohm it out to make sure I get the right one on the right, terminal. All right, go around it, straight around it a couple times. Yes, I know these scissors are purple, but they were free, so I took them. The thing about getting older, you get where you don't care as much. You don't care if your clothes are getting worn out. You don't care if you wear cheap shoes. You don't care if you wear cheap pants. You don't care if you use purple scissors. You just don't care. When you're a young person, you care about everything, about appearances. When you're older, you don't. So, if you're younger folks, you got that to look forward to. Okay, I'm going to continue on and we'll see that again. There's that one built. That's the distributor end. That's the HEI kit right out there, end. Okay, so I'm going to build up the other part, which is the shorter part, and show you that one done. All right then, more good soldered connections, and I also had to make the T connection, so to speak, for the this side of the wiring harness is the side that gets 12 volts into it. Let's see that, can you? There you go. And so I just soldered this. I just stripped back the insulation back a little bit to expose some of the wire, and then looped it, twisted it to it, and then what I used I soldered it, and then I used this stuff's called liquid electrical tape. It's sort of a semi-flexible coating, so it's good for sort of weird areas like that, and then I'll go back over it with tape. So what I'm doing here though, what I did here was this is just soldered in this connection to this coil. It's this weather pack type connector. GM uses these all over the place, still does, so pretty good type of connection. So hardest thing I had to do was to try to figure out which wire was the positive to the coil, so I had the polarity correct, and these wires were kind of faded. And this is actually supposed to be, when you look at the connector, if you're looking down at the top of the coil and you got the 3-wire connector in here, I've removed one of the wires, but there's a pink, which is on right here where this clip is to this side of it. Then there's a black with a white tracer, so to speak, and that's over here. Pink is positive. Black with a white tracer, black and white, is negative. And then you have a 3rd wire. Like I said, I removed that. That's your tack signal. I don't need that for any reason. So, if you're wondering why that I've got a coat on now, is because this is the next night after the other ones, and I had to come out here kind of late because I had a tornado scare. It's kind of early in the year for that, but not here in the South, not really. So anyway, I had to deal with that, and we're okay. So, no real big deal. Had a little hailstorm, and it was hoping it wasn't going to tear the cars up. Didn't seem to. All right, guys, let's get on with this, and we'll put some shrink wrap around those and tape them up. Okay, I got this distributor back together and everything. So one thing you want to make sure you do when you're putting one of these back together, if you've disassembled it, and really it's a good thing to do even as a precautionary thing, but you want to set the reluctor gap. And if you look in here, I got my flashlight going, by the way, again. If you look in here, the star looking thing is the reluctor, and that's the pickup coil there below it. It's got the wires coming out of it, and then that gap you see right there is the distance between the reluctor and the air and the pickup coil. That's called an air gap, and you want to have the proper gap, because if it's too close, it's potential is there for it to hit the reluctor, to hit the pickup coil and damage it when the vacuum advance kicks in and moves the plate that it's all mounted on. And then the other problem could happen is if you have it too far away, then it has a weak, it may, tend to not trigger it when it should. So you set that easily with a feeler gauge. You just go in this case it's an 8 thousandths gap, and so I conveniently have an 8 thousandths feeler gauge, and you just go in here and just slide that thing in and just make sure that it's got a little bit of drag on it. It's not loose, and this one's just perfect. It just slides right in. And the manual says to take a 10 thousandths and make sure the 10 thousandths won't fit in there, which it won't, and you don't force it either. And so that's what you do. It's real cut and dried on this, and set that properly. These things are easy to work on. Clean this up and everything. It's ready to go. It's got the new vacuum can on it and all that. So the other thing you want to make sure you do is you want to make sure that you put the part number plate back on crookedly the way it came from the factory. You can see that bend in it where it was assembled not straight on there, so I put that back the right way. That's the way Chrysler did it, and I've seen several of these and they're all the same way. I've hardly ever seen one that was on there straight, so I just put it back the way it was. So this thing is ready to go. I've got the wiring all done, ready to put on. Got the assembly itself ready as it'll ever be. Hope it works. If not, I'll have to go back to the junkyard and get another one of these. But I was telling you about this. It's called an E-core coil, and why it's called that, I forgot to tell you why that is because this has epoxy in it. It does not have oil. The round ones you see are oil filled for the most part. I think they all are. And what this has to do with, and I'm going to try to explain this in my own way, meaning that I don't exactly know all the details and I don't want to confuse anybody, but this thing, for being such a little small device here, this HEI control manual, it's got some different things it can do as far as like its power control circuitry, and you want to make sure it needs to have You want to make sure you use a coil that has the right amount of resistance, I guess it is, and these need to have very low resistance, I think, on these coils, and the E-core does. If you use an oil field, then it may not have very low resistance, and this thing may work, but it may not work as well as it could. It sort of gets away from, I guess, to try to explain this so everybody can understand it and I don't confuse myself either, is that, I guess, in other words, to get the most power out of this thing, to take advantage of using an HEI system on one of these because it has more firepower and the coil's stronger, then you have to use the matching coil to it. If you don't, you're just basically using this thing, I guess you could say, maybe at 3/4 power or 2/3 power of what it could do. So you want to make sure you use the right coil. So that car out there has a coil on it already, but it's oil filled, and it's the one that matches with that lean burn. So we're gonna leave that on there. We're gonna just leave it alone and unhook it, and that's it. It's gonna be retired. So maybe down the road, well, probably not. I was gonna say maybe down the road I might get a round one that's compatible with this, but I'm not gonna bother with that because this is just a self-contained unit, and that's the whole benefit of it. You just have it so you can just unbolt it right off the car and take it off and fix it if you have to, which you shouldn't. But okay, guys, well, it's dark 30 tonight, and I'm going to retire into the house here pretty soon, and tomorrow I think the weather's supposed to improve a little bit. It's been raining today, so I think we're going to go ahead and get going on that thing tomorrow and get that finished up finally. I'm over here baking a battery. I'm trying to fix the battery. Fix it, yeah. Trying to get this battery to hold a charge. This is the one I ruined. It's up to 78% now. It's slowly crawling its way up. And see if I can get it to come back to life for us. When I checked it a while ago, when I hooked the battery charger up, it had 1.5 volts in it. Alright, guys, we'll continue on this in the morning. Oh no. Okay, so today is the day that we're going to pull the plug on this lean burn. So, first thing we're going to do is disconnect the battery. So we don't want to short ourselves out on something. Done. And then this is where the lean burner, that's it. Lean burn computer lives under here, and we've got a couple plugs up under here, which probably easier to get to once we take the air cleaner off. So let's do that. That. Excuse me. This, which I better put back on all the way up here. And you got a harness right here that's going to the lean burn, which that harness is going to hold significance for us, so stay tuned there. Then we have a plug. Unplugs off the air cleaner up there. Alright, now let's see if we can get to these plugs under here. Okay, I guess you want the one side. Ew. That ain't gonna be easy either. Let's see here. What do we hook to over there? Oh, we got a wire over there that goes to our oxygen sensor, or about to be relieved of the duty oxygen sensor. Well, maybe we'll get this thing further out where we can deal with it here. Oh yeah, there we go. I'll take the, I want to get that off there. Oh, it's breaking. That ain't gonna happen, is it? Okay, thank you. That. That's what I wanted. I think I got another one of those anyway somewhere in there. Alright, let's see. Actually, the lean burn comes, if you look in here, this lean burn computer would come all the way off of this thing if you wanted to take it off. It's got some bolts right there that hold it on, but we're not really interested in that, I don't think. I toyed with the idea of actually putting this ignition system in that box there, but the thing about that box is it's in a bad spot. It's right over the exhaust manifold. What a dumb place to put this. But they thought that if there was scoops on this, I guess, you can see here, scoops on this thing, I guess they figured that would fix it. So from frying itself, but anyway, we're not going to worry about that right now. What we're going to worry about is taking the plugs out. So where do you guys need to be? About right there. Let's see what we got to do to get these plugs out of this. You got this heat. This is all what comprises the heat reflective tape. That's it. Just one thin piece of mylar. Yeah. Okay. Okay. What do we got? What holds this on? Just a couple of clips. Okay. Right, clip back and work this out, hopefully. Work it out. Work it out. Two clips, excuse me. Two clips. That easier. All right, one of them. There we go. All right. So now we can take this air cleaner off and set it to the side. I hate I did that. I rusted anyway. I guess that's why it was coming apart. So I think I got it. Alright. So anyway. So what we got left here after this is we have this ungainly harness. But in here, what I want to do is, somewhere in here, there's at least one of these wires is a power wire. There may be two of them, and I think, so off the top of my head, I think it may be this pink one. And then there's a large black one over here too. Chrysler's known to supply power through black wires. Figure that one out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause and I'm going to get my meter. We're going to find out where we got power there. So the reason that I want to know which of these wires, if there's one or more than one that's live with the power with a key on, is because I want to use that wire to power my HEI system. Because that makes a convenient place to pull power from, and let's see here. it's a nice place to pull power from, and that's it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put the battery back on, turn the key on, and we're going to see what we got. You know what, I actually did that kind of backwards, but that's okay. I'm going to put you guys where you can see the meter, hopefully. This viewfinder of this camera is lacking, but that thing has kind of got a shadow on it, doesn't it? Oh, that helped, didn't it? Sure did. Okay, well, I'm going to start. Don't really like that. Sorry for having you guys come along for the getting the camera straightened out part of this, but okay, anyway, you get the idea, you get the gist of it. So we got negative here, so what am I going to use for a negative? I'm about right to the body of the alternator. And then you got some alligator clips somewhere. Alligator clips I usually use for this, but I don't know where they're at right now. So careful with this, we don't want to get too far in there. Alright, let's see if we get a reaction out of anything here. 1171, first time. How about that? That was this guy. Nothing. 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 Got a blip there too. One on each end on this front row. And then it's got more voltage. Back here, this pink one, which I'm going to crimp. I think that's our. So I remember which one it is. I think that's the one we want right there. So let's see what this one's got. Nothing. 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 Got one there. Nothing. Those two are live. So a couple live ones here on this side, on this plug, but I noticed they're all down about 11.8 volts, and this one here that I like is 12.13, which is probably going to be close to battery voltage. So now, let's do something else. Turn the key off and see what we get. Okay, because it's imperative, like I said, it's imperative that a light goes off, or power goes off when the key goes off. So, let's see what we get. Oh, nope, I don't like you because you are still on with the key off. So let's see what we get here. You are not. Okay. What did we say we had? This one was live also. We're doing that backwards. Why don't we get the idea, huh? Okay, everything in this one is dead with key off, except I know we got one that's live. You're still live in this one. Let's double check. That's too bad because that one's got plenty of power. I like that, but it's not gonna do us any good if it won't go off for the key. Then car won't ever quit running. So not good. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna take the battery connector back off the battery terminal cable. So I'll shock myself, and then I'm going to start. I know in this harness here, this end one, which is this is a white with a black, and this one is a kind of a lime green with a orange, I guess, and then this pink one are all live. And then there was a couple in this one that came on too when you turned the power on. So this thing, I'm going to start unwrapping this harness because really this thing is supposed to be self-contained out here under the hood. I mean, it's going to tie into the dash harness somewhere, you know, back to the ignition switch. So either way, I'm going to start unwrapping this harness and tracing some wires and seeing what I got. If it's like that Dodge truck I did this on, then a couple of these wires are going to, like this one and this one that come on with a key and go off with a key, they're going to probably intersect each other back in there someplace. But all right, let me do that, and I'll come back to you when we make some kind of discovery. You know you want to watch. Okay, so carefully try to cut this back here. Everyone else about the way my car wraps their harnesses. It's tape. That's what it is. It's up here with electrical tape. So, the way the wires are wrapped together here. That's interesting. I'm watching South Main Auto Repairs channel a lot. Like remember what he says: cut towards your belly, not towards your body. What is this here? Weird stuff there. Come on. This is the fun part of this. Try to cut with the wires and not get them, so you know, hopefully minimize your potential for problems here. Or minimize your potential for causing problems for yourself. That coil wires, that choke wires looking awful toasty. Okay. Let me do some more, guys. You don't have to watch the whole thing there, I think, so a little bit. Okay, then, now here is where it's going to get fun. So I've taken the liberty of going ahead and taking this wiring harness off the car here that goes to the lean burn, so it's on the workbench here, and I laid it out, unwrapped it, laid it out, and labeled it. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go through and look at this thing and see what everything does here and what we need to keep and what we need to get rid of. So we're going to take all the time we need to take on this and do this slowly, because this seems to be the part that sort of intimidates people when they have never fooled this type of stuff before, and it's understandably so. I try to do as little bit of shaky cam as possible, but we'll see how it goes. Okay, so this harness is mostly lean burn, and it's also got some basic functions that are essential to keep on the car itself, the engine itself. So we're going to take a look at that. That's why I've labeled everything, and we'll discuss those, or I'll explain them as well as possible. So if you have any questions after you watch this video, please be sure to ask them. So this is laid out sort of roughly the way it's routed on the engine. You got lean burn over here, you got a couple things up here, 2 or 3 things up here. You got a connector here. You got some stuff back here towards the back by the distributor and all that. So anyway, let's start over here. These two connectors, you saw me fool these earlier. These are the lean burn connectors. They go right into the lean burn unit itself on the air cleaner, and I've labeled those lean burn 1, lean burn 2. That makes no difference because they're just connectors. So we know for a fact that these are going to go away completely. We do not need the lean burn wiring anymore to that unit. So keep that in mind. Now this is the pigtail for the oxygen sensor, so that's going to go away also as part of that. So as we come around the front of the engine by the water neck and the carburetor and all that, on the left side, which I'm going to get up here in just a minute, I'm going to show you these on the engine, but on the left side over towards the driver's side of the intake manifold, you're going to see this connector. This has got a lime green wire, and it's in the intake in a water passage. And what this is the lean burn. I've called this the lean burn CTS. That stands for lean burn coolant temperature sensor. And if we were to trace this back like this, come around here, we can see that wire is going right back into one of these connectors up here. So that reinforces that knowledge that what that is for, that is what the lean burn uses to verify engine temperature, coolant temperature. That has nothing at all to do with the gauge at all. Nothing. And I'm about to show you why. If we come over here, I've got this little small wire with this connector. Looks like this, which they're both small wires, but this one's kind of a pinkish, dark pinkish color. And this is for the temperature gauge in the car. And the reason I know that is because not only is it in the spot on the intake up there near the right front passenger side behind the alternator where they've been for 40 years. Not only that, but when I follow this wire around, and just stick with me here, be carefully try to show you this. Pick this up here out of the way. We have what I've called a body harness, and this is a connector. It's a large connector that goes into the continuation of the engine harness that's made into the car up there. But I see that wire from what I call the temperature gauge wire comes around, and it curves around, and it goes right directly into that connector. So that tells me that that verifies my intuition on that it's going into the car. So all this is the way these work is the gauges in the car are supplied with voltage, 12 volts when the key's on, and this is simply a ground. So one wire. Okay, so we know that. So we know that we're going to keep this for sure. We're not going to get rid of this. We're not going to chop any wires to it off. Not going to do anything. This one we can because that's lean burn only. This one we do not. So now right up here on the carburetor, going into the carburetor, there's about 4 wires on these 6280 carburetors. If yours has lean burn, then it's at least got 2 wires. And they'll go directly into the carburetor. I'm not talking about this little thing we're about to see, the little kick-up solenoid that's on the side of it. That's got 2 wires also, but this goes directly inside the carburetor to the mixture control solenoid as it is. It's really an air control solenoid on this one, but anyway, I've called this carburetor kick and MCS, which means carburetor kick-up solenoid. I was showing you on another video how this kicks up the idle in certain instances, which it ain't gonna do that anymore because this is controlled by the lean burn, unfortunately. But anyway, so this will go into that harness, and it runs back into other areas. So we're gonna have to follow those wires. When we get to this point, we have to follow these wires and see where they go. And I'm probably for sure gonna guess that they're all gonna go back to the lean burn system. So if they do, take them off. But we'll cover that more in just a minute. So there's the body harness that plugs into the body of the car, and we'll know more about that. Don't chop any wires off on this thing until you know you don't need them, because when I see wires going into the car harness, then that tells me they're doing something that probably needs to remain operational. Okay, when we come back alongside the carburetor, you're going to find this little choke heater you're going to see in here. And what I call it's actually what these have, they have a intake mounted choke like they all used to, but it has a little heater on it also made into it, and then it has beside it, it has a little unit, looks like it has a ballast resistor on it, which it does. That's exactly kind of what it is. And that is the temperature unit that determines how much time the choke receives power in order to vary its on time. In other words, when it's really cold outside, that this little thermostatic unit, I'm going to show you in there, it cuts the power assist to that choke so the choke stays on longer. But when it's like today, it's like 60 something degrees and you don't need that much choke and the choke needs to come off pretty quick, then this thing applies power to the choke to heat it up faster and makes it kick off faster. So you want to keep this for sure. Do not get rid of this. Alright, back here behind and below the distributor, you've got an oil pressure switch, and sorry for the label being in the way, this is a 3-position switch, and this is identical to the way that they run the ones for General Motors products in the 80s. Two of these wires, these two blue wires, are the circuit to the choke I just showed you. If you follow this around, it's going right back into that harness, and I guarantee it's going to go right down there to it. And so what that's about is, that's the deal where your oil pressure, when your engine is turned off, there's no oil pressure, so the switch, I guess, falls open. So excuse me. Yeah, so anyway, pollen is in the air, guys. So anyway, what happens with that is, the importance of that is that it cuts power. If you're sitting there with your key on for some reason without the engine running, then it's going to cut power to this choke heater, so your choke's not going to warm up inadvertently without the engine running. So that's all that is. You need to retain that for sure. And then the center one's going to be your ground for your oil pressure lamp, so that needs to stay also. And this is just a firewall harness. I'm not exactly sure what the function of this is. It's a pretty light duty harness, but it just comes out. It's got some wires. I guess it's just some secondary supply. I know this is one of the hot wires that goes to the lean burn, that lime green one. So we're going to look at this, and again, it's just going to be kind of one of these things you're just going to have to follow the wires along and see where they go before you start cutting. If it goes to lean burn, you know, it's a pretty safe bet that you can cut it back here and just tape it off and seal it off and all that. So, but we'll get to that in a minute. So here is the distributor harness. This is a very common. It's got two wires on one side of it. I've never seen that before. That's interesting. It must come out to this thing. Anyway, that goes right, it hooks directly to your distributor like they all did way back in the day. That's a very common harness, except like I said, I've never seen one that has, I guarantee that's got a splice under it. That's why Chrysler did it. And so anyway, I'm going to keep that. We won't need that anymore, because we've got one made onto our new harness that does that job. So you can, I would, if you fool with Mopars, I would probably pull these wires out as far as you could. They go right back up in there to the lean burn again, all the way up there. I'd probably chop those things up there and keep this harness, because it's just good to have. If you build one of these systems, you need one of these harnesses. So, and then you've got, last but not least, you've got this little guy that's going to be back in one of the intake runners back there, and this is an air intake temperature sensor for the lean burn, and that just simply tells the lean burn again how warm or how cold the intake air temperature is, and it adjusts its parameters accordingly, I guess you could say. So anyway, that's basically what we're looking at, and I'm just going to have to pick through this thing. It's like a jigsaw puzzle, but I'm going to pick through this thing, and like I said, number one thing, I'm going to determine which wire is going to supply my system, and I already tell you, I think I know what I'm going to do here, because I'm looking at this situation right here, and this is, again, I know there's a lot of wires here, but this is your body harness, and we know that's going to exist past the time of the lean burn. And if you look down in here, this is exactly what I was talking about earlier. This is a splice right here, factory made splice. So it's got the blue wire coming in there, and then it's got on the same side, it's got, whoops, I'm sorry, it's got a blue wire going back out to guess where? The lean burn out here. Allied. That's actually got one going to the carburetor harness, and then this is the one that goes to the lean burn out there. And then one goes back out to the oil pressure switch, and then in turn to the choke heater. So that tells me that just right away, it tells me that that's going to be a 12-volt supply. That's a nice thick harness here. And that would be good to use for my ignition system. Now, I'll tell you this right away. Normally, they recommend that you put a relay in this to make sure you get 12 volts, but I think I'm going to cheat this time. I'm going to do without that and see if it works. So we will just see. I was looking at this pink wire here. This is the one that I was so happy about because it had 12 volts. Seemed like it had more voltage than the other, and the reason why I did is because it wasn't running the choke, looks like. But I'm thinking about something here. I don't like using a relay because relays tend to be cheap, and if they fail, it kind of kills it. I'll think about that. I'll think what we're gonna do. We may come back to this, but I think I'm just talking out loud here. But I think one thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna preserve this wire that I know has 12 volts to it. No, I can't do that. I can't, because it can't have. I guess it could. We may do the relay thing anyway. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll tell you more about that. Let's go look under the hood here and look at some of these connectors. Okay, right up here in the intake, that's the coolant temperature switch for the lean burn. You can just leave that thing in there. It's gone. It's not going to perform any function any longer. Over right there, if you can, ooh, can't really see that, can you? Why can I see it, but you can't? There it is. So that guy right down there in the right front of the intake, that's your gauge temperature switch for the gauge. You can remember to keep that and use it. Don't pay attention to this stuff. These are actually vacuum lines in here. Alright, so that's your carburetor connector right there I told you about. And I've already taken 2 of the wires out of that because this is not a 6280 anymore. I put a standard carburetor on it, but it goes over to your kick-up solenoid. This is your choke heater, and I pulled the wire off that goes to it. The other wire goes right over to the unit itself. But that's a little thermostat looking dude that I was describing earlier. That's your pigtail for the distributor, which is right there, which we're going to pull that distributor out. We're not going to use it anymore, so don't worry about that either. That's your oil pressure switch down there. It's kind of oily down in there, doesn't it? Anyway, that's it. You're going to retain that. Where else we got something? This is this air intake temperature switch for the lean burn. You see it's in the runner right there. And then this is this harness that's pulling off the firewall right here. It goes to parts unknown, I guess, back into the car somewhere. We're not going to fool with that. If nothing else, we'll let it hang if we're not going to need it for anything. And then here's the harness, what I called the excuse me, the supply harness that goes right into the rest of the harness right here, if you can see that. So we're not going to fool that thing at all. And this has nothing to do with your alternator or anything like that, or your air conditioner, so don't go pulling those wires off. You don't have to even fool with them. So, okay guys, well, I'm going to start parsing through these wires here, and we'll do another round of this. This is going to be a long video. It's probably going to be a 2-parter at least. So I'll come back when I've studied this enough to know what I'm going to cut. Then we'll come back to it. See you then. Right then, so this is what we got left on this wiring harness after distilling it down to the essential circuits. Don't mind that, it's something else. But we have engine coolant temperature for the gauge in the car. We have our harness connector, and then we have this blue wire with several branches to it, which is considered to be a 12-volt key-on supply. And we have oil and choke circuits here. And this guy over here, I erroneously said that this was a 12-volt supply from somewhere. It's not. That was incorrect. What this is, it has 12 volts going to it out of this circuit here, the source. But what this does, this hooks in to the there's a little harness that connects to these vacuum solenoids that in turn operate things like the EGR and stuff like that, and this air pump, the air injection pump, and possibly the charcoal canister. So those are probably going to present their own issues to get those working when they're supposed to be working, because the computer's been controlling those. But they're still vacuum, and what we may have to do, we may have to find ourselves some vacuum coolant temperature switches to go in here. Basically what that is it's just a, I think I've talked about this before, but it's just a little 2 or 3 port switch that threads into the coolant, like where that little sensor is at in there. It threads into a port that's in contact with the coolant, and so it does not let vacuum pass until the coolant is of a certain temperature, like about 179 degrees, somewhere in there, maybe a little bit one side of that. But otherwise, what that means is, it just means that it's intended to keep things like the charcoal canister or the EGR from working when the engine's cold. So that's going to take a little bit of work with that to get those functioning. I think what I'm going to have to do is just kind of basically backdate it. In other words, I'm going to have to run it like they ran them when they had charcoal canisters and EGR before they had this lean burn on them. So we're talking about like late 70s stuff. So may have to spend some time on that and research that, but we'll get it working one way or the other. Because I know everybody has their own opinions about EGR and stuff like that, but I'd rather, just rather have, I don't want to, the last thing I want to do with this is incur more problems, like drivability problems. So anyway, that said, past that, what we have left here is we have a nice supply of wires that we have a 12 volt. This just basically, you have what we have here, actually, to make it simple, is we have 2 wires that go back into this 12 volt splice, and then we have, this is a key, this is the one that I was showing you early on, that's on, comes right out of the car harness, and this thing's got battery voltage all the time, no matter what, key on, key off, it's always live. So what I like about this thing, why I keep coming back to this, is that I don't, what it is, basically speaking, is what I like about this is that it's got plenty of voltage to it. These others, you measure these we get with a meter, and they run right about 11.6, 11.7, and this guy's always up there about 12.13, 12.15, 12.20, so it's definitely a bit hotter, I guess you could say. So here's what I'm considering doing. It's going to push me back a little bit on this, but I think I'm going to go ahead and get a good relay, and I'm going to build a relay for this also and put in, and it kind of complicates it, but I think it's the thing to do, because these ignition systems, birds living in this building out here, these ignition systems really like to have a lot of voltage to them. And these, like I said, these Mopars, they're not known for having robust alternators on them. So at idle, then you could be going down to 11.5 volts. So there's a chance that it could make the ignition system kick out. So we don't want that. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I think I'm just going to use this. I'm going to use one of these key-on circuits to switch the relay on, and then we're going to use this to supply it, and then out to the ignition system. And it's kind of complicated, but I think that's the best way to do it. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to order a relay, and we'll come back to this probably on the next weekend or during the week, whenever I get my next allotment of time to do it. And in the meantime, I'm going to study this about how to operate these. Well, I know how to do it. As far as charcoal canister, I just got to take the control of the vacuum signal from. I got to take it from lean burn back to just standard coolant temperature activated. I'll show you. It'll make sense. But in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this harness back up with my tape and get it back ready to go on, and may start trial mounting that box up. But I think this is a good place to jump off here in part 1 of this. It's going to be a couple, 3 parts of this. Hate that, but otherwise you guys got to sit through this huge long video, so I don't want to do that. So anyway, we'll see you in the next part of this. Thank you much for watching, and stay tuned.